Hello and welcome to Global Eye. US-China ties are at an all-time low. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has said that the time has come for the world to push back against China and that the US has slept over that threat way too long. The US has decided to impose visa restrictions on employees of Huawei and Chinese technology companies, a visa ban on high-ranking officials of the Chinese Communist Party, and sanctions on Hong Kong. US is also pushing allies for closer alignment against China. In this backdrop, we had the Indo-US CEOs Forum and an important phone call between US Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross and Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. Both sides discussed the possibility of an FTA. India sought early conclusion of a totalization agreement that has been pending and sought greater market access for Indian products as well. Let's discuss the key takeaways with the President of US-India Business Council, Nisha Biswal. Nisha, thank you very much for speaking to CNBC TV 18.
It's a pleasure to join you.
Nisha, do you get a sense that because of the huge debate over China in this election, US would now be seeking a closer trade partnership with India, a closer technology partnership, and possibly an early FTA as well?
Absolutely. First of all, let me just apologize. You're hearing my dog in the background. Look, I think that as a result of the progress that's being made, I think there's renewed interest in the U.S.-India economic partnership. And certainly we would like to see movement towards an FTA. We're a ways away from that. We do need to resolve a number of issues and show that we can build the kind of economic partnership that allows us to move towards an FTA. And that is something that will benefit both India and the United States, help rebuild both of our economies and generate jobs for our people.
Right. You know, there was a lot of focus on a limited FTA. I think this is something that both sides spoke about. Do you really feel, Nisha, that it could happen in the next 4 months leading up to the presidential election, or this is something that the next president of the United States will only sign on?
No, look, I think there's every reason for this agreement to be finished in the next several months. There's every incentive to try to get a limited agreement on the books that shows that we can resolve some of these issues. And I know that both sides are pretty close, but there are some sticking points I understand that they probably need to get around. And then we can move on to what a next administration, whatever the outcome, can focus on a larger agreement. But I do recognize that the closer we get to elections, the harder it becomes to get the time and attention to reach an agreement. So I'm hoping that all of the flurry of activity that has happened with the CEO Forum and with conversations between the two trade negotiators, that perhaps something can be eked out.
Nisha, we have been hearing a lot of conversation in the United States over India's draft e-commerce policy, the digital tax, and India has conveyed that this is not against the United States. There are several other countries who impose this digital tax as well. What do you think would have been the message from Secretary Ross and the US CEOs in this meeting? We have been hearing India's concern about 24 products which are in the restricted list by the United States, shrimp imports, totalization agreement. But what do you think is Secretary Ross's pitch at a time when the US is going to elections?
Well, look, I think that digital commerce, digital trade between our two countries is going to get ever more important. And we want to see that trade corridor grow. Trying to avoid unilateral tariffs and taxes that will inhibit that growth is important. It's important for both sides to keep in mind that the way to grow that trade is to look at collaborative arrangements, getting a mini deal, and looking at a larger framework, whether it's a comprehensive trade deal or whether it's on specific sectors such as e-commerce. But to get a framework in place is the way to do it rather than any unilateral actions by either government. And I hope that that was part of that conversation this week.
Right. And my final question to you would be about the totalization agreement. I think Secretary Ross conveyed to India that this is something that needs more conversation. What do you think? Do you think that this pending agreement between India and the United States can be concluded?
I do think on totalization that there are complexities in the U.S. that need to be addressed, and particularly would require, I think, statutory changes with the Congress as well. So while there is a lot of understanding of the issues that have been raised by the India side and that have been raised for some time on totalization, I think getting to the answer is going to take a little bit of time to work through.
All right. Nisha Biswal, thank you so much for speaking to us on the key takeaways of the Indo-US CEOs Forum and the way ahead for India-US trade ties as well.
Thank you.
We also caught up with Krishna Bodanap, MD and CEO of Cyient. He's also a member of the India-US CEOs Forum. He was present in this meeting earlier this week. He told me that there is huge potential for 5G cooperation between US and Indian companies. I began by asking him about whether the two sides are looking to sign a limited trade deal soon.
I think the intent is for a limited trade deal to be signed quite imminently. And also, I believe there is a fair intent that we should expand it into a more comprehensive trade deal. Obviously, that will take a little bit more time and a lot more discussion and deliberation. But I believe that there will be a trade, at least a limited trade deal relatively soon. And that will also help quite a bit with some of the objectives of how both countries intend to increase our partnership.
Okay, from your point of view, what should be the priorities for India in such a limited trade deal?
Yes, absolutely. I think the market access is a big priority for India. I think market access in our situation will have to be both people and obviously goods and services. And I believe that there are a number of areas that we are focused on. Of course, there's the whole H-1B discussion that is going on, but that is one element of this because for India, the access to people is a very high priority and a strong priority. But similarly, I also believe that there are a number of elements of goods that the Indian government is targeting towards significantly improving both the access for Indian companies to the US market and also on the flip side to increase the access for US companies to the Indian market. Because again, in the current geopolitical situation, I think there is a strong intent to also decrease the dependency on the imports from countries like China. And that will only happen when we are able to find a good alternative, cost competitive source. And obviously with the focus that the US has had in manufacturing for many, many years now, they are a very strong source for good, solid, also technologically advanced goods that we really need as the economy ramps back up again.
US has been pushing for closer collaboration with India when it comes to 5G technology. Do you think that will be a win-win partnership?
Yes, absolutely. I feel that anything that increases the communication capability in the country will be something that will be a real win-win for all of us. Obviously, you know, when 5G needs to be rolled out, a country like India needs a lot of equipment, needs a lot of fiber and what have you to support the 5G backbone. So I strongly believe that that's one area that both countries will greatly benefit from collaboration, both from the US perspective where you know, they have some of the best 5G technology, and India is a huge consumer of that technology. And also from an India perspective, because 5G will also mean that there will be significantly more amount of software, there will be significantly more number of applications that the network can run. And really the adoption of 5G also will depend on the adoption of these applications and the software, right? And unless we create use cases, 5G network per se, because for voice communication, for even video, for example, 5G is not necessarily required. 5G really starts to show its applications and show its use in machine-to-machine communication, machine-to-machine connectivity, areas like telemedicine, areas like remote education, things like that, or where areas where decision-making has to be fast and almost instantaneous. So therefore, I also strongly believe that creating these applications and use cases becomes very important for the adoption of 5G, and that's where a number of Indian companies do extraordinarily well. And therefore, the technology, the hardware, a lot of the backbone coming from US companies, and the applications, the software, the overlay coming from the Indian companies, I think is a huge win-win. And also, what we also have to realize is together we're a market of 1.5 billion people, which means that we are obviously a very, very large market.
Do you feel this H-1B visa ban is likely to be overturned anytime soon? And how much of a setback was it for Indian companies?
Most Indian companies right now were well prepared in terms of how we hire within the US, hire and not just hire, but also hire, retain, and engage with people across the world. If you look at the latest results from most IT companies, the percentage of H-1Bs has gone down dramatically over the last few years. Just as an example, in our case, I'll say that H-1Bs comprise less than 15% of our US workforce, and that number will continue to come down. So I think the first thing I'll say is, at least from an Indian company perspective, while it's always an inconvenience, it's not something that will significantly impact.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krishna Bodanap, for joining us on CNBC TV 18. Moving on, it seems the impact of US sanctions are now being felt most strongly on the India-Iran partnership. Iran, according to reports, has dropped India from the Chabahar-Zahedan rail project. An MOU for this was signed during Prime Minister Modi's visit to Iran in 2016. The Ministry of External Affairs has also confirmed that Iran will be going ahead alone in the Farzad B oil field. This was an area where Indian oil PSUs were invested in. They were working with Iran for over a decade. At the same time, a New York Times report says that China and Iran are now close to sealing a massive economic, military and strategic partnership, and China is even considering investing $400 billion in Iran over the next 25 years. Ambassador K.C. Singh, India's former envoy to Iran, is joining us now. Ambassador Singh, thank you very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18.
It's a pleasure.
Do you think the fact that Iran is going alone with the Chabahar-Zahedan rail line project is a big setback for India?
Look, we should have been expecting this because this has been building up since last year. First, over the CAA protests, Iran had made some noises. And then after the Article 370 abrogation, again, the Supreme Leader pitched in with tweets, which India took exception to. So this drama was going on where Indian domestic politics was playing into the senior Iranian leadership's mind. And I think at that point, we ignored it. We thought it's just pro forma protest by them. But in addition, we had scaled back. Till now, in the past, what we had done was we used to accept the UN or multilateral sanctions authorized by UN. But the unilateral sanctions of the US, we had told the US that we would not follow those. But I think over the last 1 year, the pressure, what President Trump calls bringing maximum pressure on Iran, that was beginning to bear. So we had scaled back petroleum purchases from there. We scaled back trade. And in the meanwhile, Iran was really in a corner. Now, from that position, and in addition, there's a growing proximity which they could see between us and UAE, between us and Saudi Arabia. We had the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi come here as a chief guest at a Republic Day, and so on and so forth. So there was a personal kind of engagement between Prime Minister Modi and the two Crown Princes, which was all sending signals to Tehran that we are more or less comfortable dealing with this group, which is aligned to the US and which is opposed to the Iranian interests. Now, in that corner, Iran having been driven into that corner, the Chinese threw them a lifeline. And I think the last opportunity which was there was last year, and that you get from Bolton's book, that when Prime Minister Abe, Japanese Prime Minister, went there, he went there with the consent of the Americans, but the Americans gave him nothing to hand to Iranians. They said, we can have a deal as long as Iranians come and give up their nuclear program. In fact, it's recounted in the book that Abe then told President Trump that the Supreme Leader was taking notes, but after they finished, he just simply told him, fine, carry on. He didn't even answer. And then before Prime Minister Abe got into the flight, the Supreme Leader tweeted and he said, well, Prime Minister Abe is fine, but President Trump is a person we cannot do business with. So, this had been building up. And I think because of probably the COVID outbreak in China and then in Iran, this got delayed. So this was happening, but we should not take it as a fully closed door. In Iran, the doors are never fully open or fully closed.
But Ambassador Singh,
they would like to also...
Yeah, but Ambassador Singh,
Go ahead.
I'd like to ask you about this New York Times report, which talks about this massive $400 billion investment by China over the next 25 years. So both sides have not confirmed it. It is a leaked report that we are talking about. But do you think this is indeed alarming for India? Do we have options to probably get back with our Iranian partners?
Well, not at the moment, because if you're going to go along with President Trump and you don't want to engage Iran because you don't want to offend President Trump, then the options are limited. Probably part of the reason the report has been leaked, I'm sure it's done with the consent of the Iranian government. Somebody has done it. It may be just a warning they're sending out to the Europeans, to countries like India. At the same time, they would accept the deal. But it doesn't mean it's something which is happening overnight. It has to go to the parliament. The parliament has got a radical faction is controlling the parliament at the moment. And the Iranians have a great thing about strategic independence. And there would be a debate in the parliament. Already former President Ahmadinejad has rejected it. So, there is still some way to go.
Okay.
But that depends on how India wants to play the cards.
Right.
Because Iran is critical for us. Chabahar is not just critical for just giving us access to Central Asia, but it's crucial access to Afghanistan, particularly in a situation where there may be Taliban rising or even Taliban getting into power there or sharing power at the moment.
Okay.
Iran remains the only path for us
Right.
to be able to really have any
Yeah, Ambassador Singh, I'll ask you one final quick question on the Farzad B issue. This is something that you would know very well. What would be the monetary loss to India? The MEA has said that Iran took this decision to go alone because of its own political decisions. This was nothing to do with India. But what do you feel about it?
Look, normally the Iranians, their policy is they don't sell the fields. So we had not bought anything. What they do is they allow you to prospect. And then you're given a certain amount of return on that if the gas is found. The risk is yours. But on the return itself, you get the first right to buy it, and plus you get some return on it. But this is not the first time it's happened, because the sanctions, when they started, UN sanctions started in 2006. And after that, whatever presence we had, Japanese stepped out, Indians stepped out, and even then the Chinese had gone in. So this is not the first time the Chinese have tried to fill the vacuum.
Right.
But nevertheless, oil and gas, whatever you lose here, you will gain with Saudi Arabia and Emirates. That is not the issue. But I think Iran is more than just oil and gas.
Right.
Because it's a major country for connectivity, for access to Afghanistan. And you don't want them in the Chinese corner at a point where it's a very assertive China.
All right.
Which is, line of actual, at LAC, they are asserting themselves.
Okay.
All along the periphery, they are asserting themselves. So they are reaching Iran and entrenching themselves becomes a strategic challenge.
All right. Ambassador K.C. Singh, thank you very much for putting that very important story. Iran and Chabahar port being a gateway to Afghanistan as well, a neighbor we just can't ignore. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to take a short break here on The Global Eye, but coming up, we get you an exclusive conversation with the European Union Ambassador to India, Ugo Astuto, and also some key highlights from the 15th India-EU Summit. Stay tuned.
Mobile payments, do you believe that that is going to continue to track this kind of exponential growth that we have seen?
We were already on an inexorable path towards digital payments. COVID-19 accelerated that trend in a dramatic way.
From an investor's perspective, what is most important is to be well diversified, not to put all your eggs in one basket.
Some economists feel that we should not worry so much about the fiscal, but concentrate on reviving demand. What are your views?
As long as you don't do anything which will permanently tear the fabric of economic growth, I think experiments will have to be done by government.
Is India really prepared?
India is thoroughly prepared to handle any situation that might emerge.
The travel restrictions that we put in place yesterday are till 15th April.
Don't leave everything to the government. Government will do what it can.
Malls, pubs, theatres all shut. Are we overreacting?
Social distancing is the only option we have to protect ourselves.
And we, as the world, need to work together.
India's overcrowded health system may succumb if outbreak gets bigger.
We have a fairly good national plan. I do think that India should be able to tackle this. We go where the news is. News Epicenter at these times on CNN News 18.
In these unprecedented times, as markets turn volatile and investor fears increase, CNBC TV 18 helps investors create a pandemic-proof portfolio. Meet the Nawab of Dalal Street as he gets you insights from the finest financial minds.
A lot of the paradigms we thought were very reliable have gone busted.
Debt and credit is the best asset class at this point of time.
You always have stocks that are outperforming into the peak.
Wizards of Dalal Street.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Eye. India and European Union have decided to put the focus back on free trade negotiations after talks failed in 2013. At the India-EU summit this week, both sides have decided to set up a high-level trade dialogue to discuss a mega FTA. They also discussed economic and healthcare partnership in a post-COVID-19 world. I caught up with the European Union ambassador to India, Ugo Astuto, and began by asking him about the India-EU 2025 roadmap. Listen in.
At the summit, the leaders agreed on an ambitious roadmap 2025. This will steer our strategic partnership in the years ahead. Areas of cooperation are pretty wide. I can mention maritime security, climate change, the digital economy, but also connectivity and research and innovation, all people-to-people contacts. As to the priority, let me underscore that climate action and the green transition will be at the heart of our economic recovery in the European Union and in India, I believe. I think you know that the European Union has launched a program called European Green Deal.
Right.
This is about making Europe a climate neutral continent by 2050.
Okay.
But we recognize that in order to achieve our goals, we need to work with international partners.
Right.
And India certainly is a key partner in this respect.
Both sides discussed the human and economic cost of COVID-19. How will European Union and India now work together to mitigate the cost of this crisis?
I think I can start by saying that the European Union and India believe in a multilateral response to the crisis. This emergency requires a cohesive and coordinated response. And I would start by referring to the quest for a vaccine. A vaccine, when ready, should be available to all those in need and at an equitable price. And it's a fact that the European Union and India can do quite a lot together in this global endeavor. We particularly welcome India's role in tackling the virus, including at the regional level, and India's contribution to the research and manufacturing of the vaccine. India is a global pharmaceutical powerhouse, so India's role is particularly important in this respect.
How do you think was this negotiation from an FTA point of view, and how do you compare the FTA that EU is looking for with India to the one that EU has with Vietnam?
Well, I think that all trade agreements are important to us. And recently, we have had some success in agreeing on comprehensive and ambitious trade and investment agreements. Let me mention, for instance, the one just concluded with Mercosur, which follows what we did with Canada, with Japan, Korea, Vietnam, and Singapore. Now, India is the fifth largest world economy. It has a fantastic entrepreneurial tradition, and the EU is India's largest trading partner. We have around 6,000 European firms working in India, and also significant Indian investment in Europe. So in short, we are interested, obviously, in boosting our economic relations. There is much ongoing, but there is also a lot of untapped potential. And in this respect, ambitious, balanced, fair, and comprehensive trade and investment agreements would certainly help. Now, our leaders have agreed on the setting up of a ministerial level dialogue on trade and investment. And I'm pretty sure it will prove seminal in bringing forward our conversation. So I would defer to the ministers to to look into the way ahead. I'm sure the group will, the high-level dialogue will meet in the near future, and they will discuss not just the FTA, not just the free trade investment agreements, but also more broadly our economic agenda. We need to work together, for instance, in strengthening the rules-based international trade system. We need to work together in the World Trade Organization. India will have the presidency of the G20 in 2022. I think these all offer opportunities for partnership between the EU and India.
Okay. Ambassador, were there discussions on moving European supply chains to India, European manufacturing to India, and how does EU view India's Atmanirbhar program or the pitch towards self-reliance?
Well, I think the coronavirus has made all of us more aware of the role that global supply chains play in our daily life as well as in our economies. And it has also highlighted our dependence on sometimes crucial items, items sorely needed in times of need. So there is a reevaluation ongoing in Europe, in India, but also in the rest of the world. And I think this is natural and it's also important. At the same time, it's also important that this does not lead to introspection. It is a matter of diversifying our supply chains rather than onshoring. The European Union remains committed to the promotion of open and fair trade with all our trading partners. And we understand there is also the view from India, and that self-reliance does not mean closure, but scaled up and focused engagement in world trade. And we are ready to work with India in this direction.
Were there discussions on the rise of China during this India-EU summit?
There was also, yes, a discussion about China and about respective relations. But when it comes to the European Union, as you know, the EU has a complex and multifaceted relationship with China. China is at the same time a partner, a competitor, and a systemic rival. We need to work with China on many issues, but we also need to engage in a clear-eyed way, and we need to stand firm on our values. And in parallel, it's extremely important that we strengthen our cooperation with our major Asian partners and friends, particularly India, with whom we share values as fellow democrats.
That's all we have time for. Thank you so much, Ambassador Stuto, for joining us. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Global Eye. Many thanks for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18 for more news and updates.